Welcome inside Big Ten Today, presented by Old National Bank. Rick Kiesel alongside former Northwestern softball standout Sammy Netling. It is that time of the year. Sammy getting a little bit excited as we get into the win or go home situation inside the Big Ten. That's what makes this tournament so special. As you look at the bracket, action from Champaign starts on Wednesday. And don't forget, you can see every single game right here on the Big Ten Network. Our big story shows you those first round matchups and then the quarterfinals, which come your way on Thursday. The top four seeds, Northwestern, Indiana, Minnesota, and Nebraska, with that first round bye. They'll get their respective tournaments started on Thursday. Sammy, it is special because unlike a lot of other tournaments in baseball and other sports where you're 2 out of the 3 or you're double elimination, this is play your best or pack up and go home.
Yeah, show or go time. And it feels like a new season, right? For a lot of teams that really are looking at this week to solidify their resume for NCAAs, you take it as a new season, right? The regular season is over. We're going to have some rematches from our regular season series. We're going to have some competition that we haven't seen yet this year. So completely new season, new script, new book. And like you said, I'm just so excited to see these games this week.
Well, your alma mater, the number 1 seed, the outright regular season champs, just a great run for Northwestern at the end of the year. They did lose that one game this past weekend to Rutgers. You wonder if maybe a little bit of excitement went outside of the bubble after you clinched the outright regular season championship before that loss. But there's no question they're the favorite. When you look at Northwestern in this tournament, what do you like?
Like you said, they always tend to stutter a little bit at the end of the regular season. It seems even last year coming in, they clinched the Big Ten title at Minnesota, a series that they ended up losing, but they didn't do that this year, right? Like you said, they faltered a little bit against Rutgers, but they did not lose a Big Ten series this year, something they did not do a season ago. And we've talked about it before. This Northwestern team is so balanced this year in the bullpen, 1 through 9, off the bench. I think they just have a lot of tools in their arsenal. And so when you look at a team that is looking to build on the resume from 2022, this is another opportunity to get a goal that they did not get in 2022 and to be Big Ten tournament champions.
I mean, the experience that they have on this team, too, guys, players that have been around like Danielle Williams and Jordan Rudd, Nikki Cochran, and so many others who are either seniors or grad students. But there is a nice mix of freshmen, Candace Robinson and other players who have been big-time contributors as first years this year in Evanston. As for the number 2 seed, one of the best stories in college softball, Indiana kind of came out of nowhere. Obviously, not a lot of folks knew about Taryn Kern because she's a freshman, but she is one of the best players any class in the country this year, and her bat and what Indiana was able to do as a team earns the Hoosiers the number 2 seed.
Yeah, Taryn Kern for me is the perfect depiction of the versatility of this Hoosier offense. She's got the power. She can hit gap to gap. She's got the speed as well. You talk about a team that has 70-plus home runs and 100-plus stolen bases on the year. They're just so dynamic in their tool set 1 through 9. And I even think that the biggest growth we've seen from the Hoosiers this year is in the circle. We knew they were going to have a stellar offense. Every Coach Stan team tends to do so. But Copeland and Johnson, for me, they're sophomore aces in the circle, have really stepped up down the stretch, and they have very much earned that number 2 seed in the first round bye.
And maybe the best thing about being the number 2 seed is you go on the opposite side of the bracket of the number 1. So if you're going to have to deal with Northwestern, you're not going to have to deal with Northwestern until you get to Saturday's championship game. And because of what Indiana did during the course of the regular season, you're not really worried about having to win the auto bid. Indiana feels very comfortable about their at-large chances, regardless of what happens this week in Champaign. Now, Minnesota was a team that we were concerned about, especially early in the year, Sammy, but then they made this run late in the year. They were one of the hottest, if not the hottest team in the Big Ten outside of Northwestern over the last month of the season. Autumn Peace seems to make everything better. I think this is a team that nobody right now wants to see in the postseason.
Absolutely. And even for a Northwestern team, right? Like you said, they host the Gophers to start Big Tens and they sweep the Gophers. And I really think that was a turning point for them, right? It was a critical matchup early in the season, and we've just seen them build and get better and better. And Autumn Pease is a huge proponent of that, especially going into the postseason. You got to ride the hot hand, and there is not a hotter hand in the Big Ten right now than Pease. I think I saw a stat. her last 58 innings, she has allowed just a single earned run. Like she has just been lights out in the circle, and it's giving their offense so much confidence. And like you said, they are just playing some really tough softball in all three facets of the game right now.
Is that a real thing when you head into the postseason, especially a one-game elimination tournament, this idea of momentum? Because a lot of coaches will say at the end of the regular season, it's a reset. We're starting from scratch. I'm thinking that in Minneapolis, that's not the message that's being sent this week.
No, it's not. And it is, let's continue to build on what we've started specifically at the end of the regular season, right? I thought they had a pretty good non-conference showing. I know they stumbled a little bit to start Big Tens, but you take away that Northwestern series, and this is a team that is very much in title contention at the end of the regular season. And so for a team that is for sure a lock for NCAAs, it's building on the momentum. Can we go out? Can we get a Big Ten title in a tournament fashion and just continue to put one foot in front of the other as we head into NCAAs?
Yeah, a team that has a chance to get 40 wins this season, and that is a statement we didn't think we would be making some 8 weeks ago. As for the number 4 seed Nebraska, I kind of can't wrap my head around this team. They've had some really good moments, but against the better teams in this league, they've kind of struggled. That's an issue they're going to have to solve if they hope to make any type of run in Champaign.
Yeah, our defending tournament champions from last year, I agree with you. We have seen them be a little streaky in conference play. And for me, it lives and dies with their arms in the circle. Courtney Wallace, how can she bounce back? She is their fifth-year ace. She has been stellar. You look at the workload that she has been asked to carry this year, and I do think she has what it takes. But you talk about a team that, like you said, different from Minnesota, that is looking to really press the reset button and head into the tournament with a clean slate, with a fresh mind. Let's get back to doing what we do best, which is rolling ground balls from Wallace in the circle, right? She's not gonna have high strikeout numbers, playing really clean D, and just let our offense do what it can do in the box.
I just wonder with this team if we would be looking at them differently, Sammy, if they were to change 2 moments and they came on back-to-back nights, the extra inning loss to Northwestern, and then the very next day they give up a big lead, a 5 or 6 run lead to the Wildcats. I think that maybe would change the entire way that we look at Nebraska heading into the postseason.
Absolutely. They walked into that series against the Wildcats as a true Title 1-2 matchup, right? They had an opportunity to step above Northwestern in the seedings that weekend. And I agree with you. And you can take that series and you can look at it, if you're Nebraska, in 2 different lights, right? You can look at it as, oh, we were so close and we couldn't get it done. Or, no, we just competed with not just the best team in the Big Ten, but one of the best in the country. And we beat ourselves in those matchups. Northwestern didn't beat us. We beat ourselves. We gave up free bases. We gave up extra 60 feet here and there. Credit to Northwestern for taking advantage of it, right? They're a team that we know is going to do that. But for Nebraska, you have to take confidence and take momentum wherever you can find it. And I think there are definitely moments in the regular season where we saw this team really shine, and they need to take that as their momentum going into this week.
So it's very rare that we see all chalk. And by that, I mean it's very rare that we see all 4 teams that got the byes into the quarterfinals win and get into the semis, and then the top 2 into the finals. If there is a team that is outside this top 4, and sometimes I'm hesitant to use the term sleeper, but in this particular case, let's go with sleeper. Is there a sleeper, and that again is qualified as a team that has to play in the first round, that has a chance to make a run?
Michigan Wolverines, because the 3 best pitchers in the conference are Danielle Williams, Autumn Pease, and Lauren Durkowski. And I know it feels weird to call the Wolverines a sleeper.
They're the 10 seed, that's fair.
And if Durkowski can pitch the way that we've seen her pitch throughout the year, specifically in the Northwestern series, if their offense can have confidence in what they've been able to do, I think they can be a very dangerous team this week.
All right, Big Ten softball tournament. Again, first pitch comes your way Wednesday from Champaign, and every game can be seen right here on the Big Ten Network. Do want to update you on a developing story in Iowa City. The University of Iowa has acknowledged that 26 student athletes through 5 different sports, football, baseball, men's basketball, men's track and field, and wrestling, are under investigation for potentially violating NCAA rules by sports betting. There is 1 employee also involved in this investigation, and a separate investigation is underway by the Iowa Gaming Commission. We will, of course, update you as new developments arrive and become available to us on this continuing to develop story.
What would you say to the naysayer that says, well, that's not
That's not a real sport.
Yeah.
What I love about rowing, especially in college, is that it is the true sport that meets the mandate of collegiate athletic experience. It's supposed to be about education. It's supposed to be something that supports what you're doing in life. And rowing is the perfect example of that.
The documentary Row on Wisconsin debuted last night, chronicling the rich history of the sport in Madison. And you may recognize our guest for today's big interview because Coach Bebe Bryans was a big part of that documentary. It aired for the first time, Coach, on Monday night to the general public, but I know you had a chance to get a sneak peek. What were your thoughts on the finished product?
I was just so impressed with the way they were able to bring out what the reality of our sport is and the beauty of our sport as well as the toughness. So I loved it, and so has everybody that's seen it.
Now, you actually got to see it for the first time, my understanding is last fall, as part of the 50th reunion of Wisconsin women's rowing, which was actually the largest reunion in Wisconsin women's sports history for any sport. So what do you recall most fondly about that get-together?
Oh, wow. We didn't really know what to expect because when you get 5 decades of women rowers together, you're never quite sure what's going to happen. But it was magic. I have never felt that kind of energy. I've never felt that kind of connection and just love. It's like these women hadn't seen each other in decades, some of them, and yet it was like they had coffee together last weekend. That was the way the whole room felt with all of those women in there, and it was 5 hours of celebration. It was magic, and I'll never forget it.
It seems like such a tight-knit sport, and I imagine, Bebe, that a part of that is because of the commitment that is required, whether it's the 4 a.m. wake-ups, getting out in the boat before the sun even rises, and what is required of these athletes. Can you try to describe for those who maybe aren't that familiar, haven't yet seen this documentary, what the in and out of season training regimen is like for your athletes?
Well, I would say, first of all, you're absolutely right about the connection, but equally important to the sport itself is just the fact that these women absolutely depend on each other, whether they like each other or not, whether they have differences or not. They come together as a group unlike any other because your success as an athlete depends on the other woman, and there are no stars in this sport. So in the fall, for the varsity squad, it's business as usual, but we usually bring on between 75 and 100 walk-ons to just try out the sport and see if it's for them, and we see if we think they have potential to become the rowers that they might have been born to be. So the fall is sort of shakeout, a lot of technique work. The grueling work starts right away at the varsity level, and then through the winter time when a lot of teams are on the water, we are not. We're indoors training on rowing ergometers, which those people that have them in their gyms and have tried them usually don't stay on them very long. But our workouts are 2 hours or so on the machines, just working on the toughness, we can still work togetherness, we can still work timing, but it's mainly just grit and toughness indoors and learning to trust each other. And then once we hit the water, our motto is we get done in a day what most teams get done in a week, and that sort of shortens our window of improvement, but that's what we do, and it's working.
I'm sure with those kind of requirements, it also lessens the pool of athletes that you're interested in recruiting, because it takes a certain kind of athlete, especially those scholarship athletes, to come in and want to put in that kind of time. So what are you looking for when you are recruiting for Wisconsin women's rowing?
I think the number one thing is toughness. Just personal toughness and an open mind that they're willing to try something new and to maybe not be very good at it at the beginning. Even with the recruited athletes, the recruited rowers, going from high school to college in any sport is a really big ask. And so we're asking them to come in, learn a new technique perhaps, learn the Wisco way, and just learn how to blend with the more experienced women around them. For the walk-ons, again, it's when you're 18 years old or 17 years old and you're coming into something brand new that you may not be good at. Most of them haven't done that in 10 years. So we're looking for open-mindedness, a fierceness, an attitude of bring it, and somebody that just wants to work hard.
And you have to work hard if you want to compete in this conference at these championships this weekend. You just look back to last year's NCAA finish, not just in the Big Ten and the NCAAs. You had 2 schools finishing inside the top 10. Rutgers was just outside the top 10 in 13th. Yeah. What's the competition level like this week when you go up against schools like Michigan, like Ohio State, like Rutgers, and others that have been so successful for so many years in this particular sport?
Well, the good news for us is that we've been in that position. We've been in there. We've been to NCAAs, I believe, 15 or 16 times now. So we know what to do. We just didn't deliver last year as we wanted to. So we know what it takes. The Big Ten is always one of the strongest teams, strongest conferences, if not the strongest conference in the country. And so we sort of revel in that. That is our... that's our game. That's what we do. So we're expecting the best. We're expecting to be at our best, to go up against the best, and hopefully earn a shot at getting back into the NCAAs.
Yeah, and certainly there have been years where you have been the best, and you want to be at your best when you're rowing at these championships. I know you weren't particularly pleased with the Big 12, Big 10, I should say, Pac-12 Invitational. You kind of described it as a rough outing for your team. How do you feel about the transition, getting that kind of out of your mind and getting back into being in the spot where you want to be heading to this week?
That's a great question. Thank you for asking it. I think you never know what's going to happen day to day, and especially with us being in finals this week, which puts us at a little bit potentially of a disadvantage because a lot of the other schools are not. They're done with school and they're out. I think that's brought us together this year, and we have gotten a lot faster since we got back from Oregon. I think Oregon was a really good sort of check-in with everybody. We can either roll like that and be slow, or we can do what we know we can do, make the changes we need to make, and go the speed that we have the capability of going. It's all about going as fast as you can. Yes, you're racing against other boats, but the goal is to go as fast as you can and use the boats around you. And that's what they're doing now. And so it was a big mental shift for us. The physical work is done. We made a few lineup changes. We've been changing lineups throughout the season. And so we pretty much set them when we came back from Oregon. And they've had a chance to row in these boats for a week, which is a little bit crazy to other teams who are together forever. But it's made a huge difference, and we're really confident going into this weekend.
All right, Coach Bryans, let's finish here. I like to kind of wrap up interviews with something a little bit more lighthearted, maybe something you didn't really see coming. Every coach in every sport has a favorite movie that relates best to their sport.
Oh,
what's your favorite all-time rowing movie? I know out there Oxford Blues may be the most famous, but it's certainly probably not the most true to the actual sport, which you're obviously agreeing with as you put the thumbs down right away.
Well, I'm happy to say that so far there aren't any good rowing movies.
Okay.
So I don't have a favorite because there aren't any good ones. However, there's a couple of good ones in the hopper. One that I know of for sure that's called Boys in the Boat. And yes, it is about men. It's about the University of Washington, which both of those things could be a little bit better. But that's going to be a good movie when it comes out. And I think our documentary is a good start.
That was the absolutely perfect answer. Row on Wisconsin, #1. Boys in the Boat, of course, still in production, so it doesn't quite qualify yet. Coach Bryans, this is really fun. Thanks for being on the show. We appreciate your time, and of course, wish you and the Badgers the best of luck this weekend in Indianapolis.
Thanks very much. On Wisconsin.
Yes, spring football is wrapped up inside the Big Ten, but it is never the wrong time to talk football. Northwestern concluding its spring practice in April. Hard to believe our good friend Pat Fitzgerald will be beginning year number 18 in Evanston as the head man of the Wildcats this fall. Of course, before year 18 begins, we'll have to catch up with Fitz for an off-season chat. First and foremost, Pat, always great to see you. How's life?
It's going great, Rick. Thanks for having me on, bud. It's an exciting time for us. You know, it's a chance to finish up spring ball and finish up the school year the right way academically and then get after it this summer. So looking forward to it.
Fitz, as you went into spring, you had 5 new coaches, including a new DC. What's that integration process like when you have a handful of new staff members trying to get used to everybody that's kind of used to what you've been doing?
Yeah, well, it's been great. I mean, it's always a challenge to welcome new staff members, but it's always a fun opportunity wrapped up into one. It's been a great group. David Braun's been just outstanding leading our defense, and he was instrumental in getting Christian Smith here and LaMarcus Hicks on our coach our D-line and our corners. And then we were able to add Chris Foster offensively and Armand Benz at running back and wide receiver. So those guys hit the ground running. Our players are fired up to be working with them, and I thought spring went really well. And we just got to keep coming together. I mean, that's what it's all about, time on task, grinding together, putting all the little nuances together the way we want to do things. But most importantly, building a relationship with the players, and the guys have done a great job with that.
All right, Fitz, speaking of those players, I know as a former linebacker, are you okay? We always start with quarterbacks. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely. No, we should. It's an important position, if not the most important position.
So I've been told, and obviously there wasn't a lot of stability for you guys there last year, especially in the beginning of the year. Injuries were part of that as well. But then Brendan Sullivan came in, and injuries were part of his story, but he showed some really nice moments when he got his chance. What was your take on that quarterback competition coming out of the spring of 23?
Yeah, well, we a little banged up, last year to say the least. And as the season went along, Sully did a lot of really good things, and really grew. He played in only 4 games. He didn't finish 2 of them because of injury, but he walks out of spring practice as our starting quarterback. He was very impressive. I mean, his leadership skills are just continuing to grow. His confidence is continuing to grow. It was really fun to watch. Ryan Helinski was still out, recovering from injury from the season, and Cole Freeman and Jack Lausch both took steps in the right direction this spring. So, Sully walks out the starter, and, those guys know that, we go where they go. And I've been blessed here over my time to have some unbelievable quarterbacks that have led us to unparalleled success. And those guys know how important their position is and where they need to go this summer to get us back where we want to be, and that's competing for the Big Ten West Championship and giving ourselves a chance to win the Big Ten.
And you've had some unbelievable guys behind those quarterbacks. Evan Hull, most recently. I mean, I think that those of us that watch the Big Ten every week thought he was the most underrated player in all of college football, maybe not just last year, but maybe throughout most of his career. What will you miss most about him, and how do you account for everything he did for your team?
Yeah, well, what a great career Evan had, to lead the Big Ten from a running back position standpoint, not only, most importantly, that he did for us in receiving yards and catches, I believe, but just all around. I mean, he did so many things well. And, I kind of look at his college career kind of the way his high school career was. I mean, he wasn't heavily recruited for no fault of his own, 100-meter champion in the state of Minnesota, state wrestling champ. I mean, this guy is a stud athlete, and what I'm going to miss most is his smile and his personality. I mean, he showed up every day, ready to work. We actually had to kind of tweak his routine a little bit. He was probably working too hard, if you can believe that. And, he was just a great mentor and a great leader in the running back room. But we've got some depth there. We feel pretty good about that position, and, we're going to lean on it heavy as we move into the summer, and then obviously into early season play. And we got a huge challenge. Here we go again on the road in Big Ten play, having to go to Rutgers. So, going to be an important position for us to continue to develop, but we feel good about the depth.
And obviously, Pat, he did a lot for you in the pass game, not just the run game. And so with Evan gone, Donnie Navarro is moving on to the next level as well. Malik Washington goes to Virginia. There's going to be some new names that we need to get used to on the outside. Who are some of those guys?
Well, Bryce Kurtz has been a guy that's been around here for a while and is pretty darn explosive, and we've just got to keep him healthy. I mean, that's been the biggest challenge for him, and I think he's the next guy to step up and really take this wide receiver room over. We've got a lot of guys that we are really excited about internally. We got to just watch them continue to go. That's Coach Binz's developmental offseason as we move forward. But we think we've got somewhere between 7 and 10 guys that we feel pretty strongly about, not only at receiver, but also in the return game and special teams. So we'll see how that unfolds here over the next 4 months. But, Bryce is probably the next guy, as far as, big play production and a guy that's been around here for a while.
Defensively, Fitz, obviously there's some holes to fill. You look on the D-line and what Aditamiwa did last year and the way he developed, and not just last year, but the last couple of years, and guys you've lost, especially from the front seven. How much did you look into the transfer portal? How much did you look into other options to try to address some of those defensive holes?
Yeah, well, we're going to be a high school recruiting program as long as I'm the head coach here. That fits who we are institutionally. It fits our academic standards, and we want to be able to create a program, not just a one-year team. And so, we're going to always start and end with high school recruiting. But then, as you have some opportunities present themselves, yeah, we'll entertain the portal. You have to. It's part of college football today. We're in a little bit of a unique challenge in that area, but we'll add some pieces here as we get moving forward into the summer and getting ready for training camp. I mean, I go back 18 years ago, your roster was pretty well set after the signing day in February. And now, your roster really isn't set until you probably report to training camp. So a lot of change in roster management, but we've got a plan. We're executing that plan. And we expect to have those opportunities filled by the time we get into training camp this August.
Fitz, I kind of always like to talk with you about some non-X's and O's stuff because you have some unique perspectives and sometimes some pretty strong opinions on things going on around the sport. And I'm interested in the transfer portal and how it's affecting spring ball, because I know I spoke with some other coaches who don't want their games to be made public or trying to make them as short as possible because they believe the transfer portal and the timing of it has kind of turned some spring games into almost a showcase for other coaches to be able to look at guys who may or may not be available. Where's the transfer portal in your mind right now? And I know what you said about you guys specifically are mainly a high school recruiting program, but it is changing the way that all of college sports work. How do you think it's affecting football right now in general?
Well, it's an interesting perspective that you shared from other coaches. I hadn't heard that, but that's unique, and I can see how other people feel. I don't want to have a spring game because I don't have enough O linemen and D linemen. We're waiting for our freshmen to come in and our newcomers, and it's just me. Maybe I'm a veteran, older coach now, but I don't like seeing the big guys in a spring game. And I saw them on TV having to play every play. A guy's got to go, with the different colored jerseys, right? They're playing, offensive line when everybody's out there. I think a big part of spring is developing your culture, developing fundamentally, what you want to teach and how you want things accomplished in all aspects of your game, OD, kick, and getting your football program better. I respect the fact of spring games. I want to have a practice. I mean, we practice our tails off for all 15 of those days, and I don't want a watered down thing that doesn't allow us to get better and then have guys double dip. But specifically to your question about the portal, it's impacted everything. I mean, it's completely changed our college football. It's changed the landscape. You have to participate in it. You don't have a choice. There's no way to fulfill all the opportunities in your roster because you can't crystal ball, after the second window, where your scholarships are going to be. And so you've got to go out and fill those opportunities. And the one area that nobody really talks about that I think are hurting this level a little bit is walk-ons. I used to be able to, if there was a scholarship or 2 or 3 left over, I was able to reward one to a walk-on. Now you're able to go out in the portal and maybe add another scholarship level player. Mm-hmm. So I'm still being creative here, get great support from Doc G and our administration to be able to continue to take care of our walk-ons creatively. But it's really a group that's kind of being lost in this whole, portal opportunity. And, it's not always grass is greener, but at the same time, if an opportunity is better for a young person, as I've always told our guys, I don't want to ever see somebody leave, but if I can help them go somewhere else, I'll always be here for them. Our program will be here for them. and we wish them nothing but the best of luck.
Yeah, that's a really interesting perspective. That's one that I really hadn't thought about, but you're right. Those walk-ons kind of now a thing of the past. All right, Fitz, we're going to let you go. I know that you may be done with spring ball, but a coach's job is never done. And, of course, a Northwestern alum's job these days in the spring is never done. I know you'll be rooting for the women's lacrosse team and the softball team as well as they get their postseason started.
Yeah, no, our spring sports are crushing it, man. And yeah, I'm a huge Cat fan. It's no secret. So, we got sometimes a conflict with the women's natty and our softball team going to the World Series. That's a good problem.
Yes.
We'll all take that here. But 2 coaches of the year there. I mean, Emily Fletcher. I mean, the list goes on here. Our women's coaches are unbelievable. All of our coaches. I'm just honored to be a part and a peer of our 18 great coaches, and huge congratulations to Chris Collins with his contract extension. I'm a Cat super fan when it comes to hoops, so fired up for that. But yeah, fun times here in Evanston, and we look forward to getting bounced back in the postseason and getting where we belong, and just fired up for the future, buddy. So thanks for the opportunity. Go Cats.
You got it. We know you're a super fan. We've seen the photos. We've seen the videos of you showing up at all the events, and I know the other coaches appreciate it. Fitz, good stuff, man. Thanks for catching up with us.
Thanks, buddy. Go Cats.
We are back on Big Ten today. A reminder, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. The Big Ten reminding everyone to prioritize your mental health and seek professional help when needed. You may recall a week ago we spoke with Iowa basketball player Patrick McCaffrey, shared some great thoughts and advice, and today we welcome in Willie Burton, Minnesota Gopher great, NBA vet, and these days does a little bit of everything, even still wears the team-issued gear. Willie, welcome into the show. We appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk about such a cause that's affecting our community today.
All right, Willie, well, let's start with your life right now before we get into XLU and all the great things you're doing with the youth of this country. You're working on your PhD in sports, exercise, and psychology. What are you hoping to gain short and long term with that degree?
Well, credibility is really important when you're talking about program development and implementation of interventions. And that's what I do. So having the PhD gives me the ability to do research and development in the areas that I'm particularly special about, is that's intervention, specifically with our K-12 population. Moreover, to help the former student athletes have the ability to get back into the school setting that don't have degrees or teaching certifications. That's one of the things I found that was as a barrier to myself and others. However, I know that schools want those individuals in. However, they can't fit up under a school's budget.
Now, Willie, I know you spoke about barriers. You've knocked down a lot. Most recently, you founded XLU. It's described as a behavior change curriculum for those K-12 students that you mentioned. What's the core mission of XLU?
The core mission is to service an underserved population. The highest visible population in the school is the student athletes. The one who have the highest GPA of any group are the student athletes, because athletics serves as a motivator to academics. The goal is to arm as many individuals in their chosen communities, the stakeholders, to have the ability to engage with those students in a more consistent manner. No longer do we just show up for career day, or we show up, for one day or two, maybe a week. Now we can go into that school, work with that population, both student and student athletes, on a more consistent basis.
I know for a long time you had been part of a mentoring program, which is one of the more popular in this country, and XLU was something of an offshoot of that. So how did this program come to be? And for you, what was the motivation behind this particular program?
Well, as you can see right now, I'm in a school. But being in a school, I asked the question, what about the student athlete? This is one of the things that I think is overlooked. What about the student athlete? Because see, myself, I knew and I understood that athletics masked mental health issues. It does. That's why you see athletes come off the floor and they have issues in public. This is why they have issues sometimes in class, because athletics kind of navigates them away from some of the behaviors that they would typically engage in, or some of the emotions that they would typically feel. It's almost like an escape for 2 hours. And that's what my passion was, because no one wanted to design programs for us, the student athlete. Not only that, no one wanted to arm former student athletes to have the ability to do this. So we had a gap in the system. of those credible messengers, which are former athletes, high school athletes also, in addition to no programs that fit our population.
All right, Willie, so let's talk about those skill sets of the K through 12 young adults, the youth. What is the biggest issue right now with that group in terms of their skill sets, in terms of their decision making?
Well, number one, we have to equip the adults that are leading this population. I think that's first and foremost, to get information in their hand and arm as many of the supporting services and or credible messengers in those communities. And that includes former athletes that are in that community that may not have a bachelor's degree, to get them to have a program that opens up and allows them to deliver their experience, because that experience has value. It has value, and not everyone can deliver that experience. I think that it's really important that students be viewed as someone who do not and have not reached the potential of navigating decision making completely. In other words, you have three different populations: urban, suburban, and rural. Okay. Now, a coach on a team has those three different populations in one locker room. So now you got three different cultural ideologies, three different beliefs, three different family values, three different sleep times, so on and so forth, holiday celebration. And now you're trying to put that all together in one. Okay. And that's at the K-12 level, let alone. So one of the things is to have those credible messages and arm them with information. But those credible messages have to be brought up to date and also have to be pulled in are those credible messengers in those chosen communities.
Willie, you mentioned mental health awareness. I'm curious, how can we better prepare our kids through mental health awareness to deal with a lot of these outside influences that honestly, people of our generation, whether it be social media or outside criticism, there's a lot of stuff we didn't have to deal with that these young folks today, they do have to deal with on a daily basis.
We have to equip them with the necessary skill set. XLU has two mental health programs. It has one for elementary and middle school and one for high school. So we have a total of 10 different programs to navigate these, to get students to understand and guide them down their feelings, their emotion, and also checks and balances, see how they're feeling that day or that week, or that month. It's also almost like a Geiger counter for students. That way you can have your hand on them and you're not so surprised when something happens. It's more consistent, more hands-on, and it's also very educational as far as, because some individuals or some students won't have this in their family. They won't have this language. They won't have the dialect. They won't have the definitions associated with what they're going through. And it's important to arm them with that information.
All right, Willie, let's finish here. You're obviously a busy guy. You're getting your PhD, you're running XLU, doing a lot of mentoring. Do you still have time to dominate pickup games in the Twin Cities area?
Well, that was up until about a week ago. Now I pull my hamstring again. So
no.
That reminds me of actual age. I probably still can shoot, but I can't run for long periods of time without a muscle pulling and changing. And that's something that former athletes needs to be ready for also. But I like to take this time and to thank my partner, which is Star Commonwealth. Star Commonwealth is going to help me with engaging. I just had a conversation with the NHL. We're going to work with former NBA players, NFL players, WNBA players to distribute the XLU program this upcoming school year across the country. In addition, what I like to do is arm those college students in those states. Again, college students in those states. It's called the NIL. You can go into the schools, into your community, and also make money, make impact, and start a business. It's exactly what I'm doing.
Wonderful stuff from Willie Burton. Great messages. Willie, we really appreciate not just the time, but everything you are doing for the Twin Cities, for athletes coast to coast, for the youth of this country. We appreciate everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on the show, and I really appreciate it. Love watching you guys also. I still watch, believe it or not. I still watch.
We appreciate that. Old National also helping us provide today's big stat. Remember how I had said it's rare that chalk always makes its way through a single elimination tournament? Well, The Big Ten Softball Tournament tells me I'm wrong. Last 5 champions have all either been number 1 or number 2 seeds. Of course, Minnesota making that amazing run from 2016 through 2018. And this bracket gets started on Wednesday with the 4 first-round games you see listed on your screen. Starting at noon, Rutgers, Ohio State. Then it's Michigan, Penn State, Iowa, Maryland, Illinois, Wisconsin. Those 4 winners advance to play the top 4 seeds, which enjoy first-round byes. And to break down those first-round games, Sammy Netling is back with us. Let's start with the first game to be played at the tournament. That'll be Rutgers, Ohio State, the 11 versus 6 seed. What should we be watching for?
The name of the game this whole week is pitching, but specifically in this matchup, whoever has a stronger showing in the circle is going to run away with it. These are 2 of the more explosive offenses in the entire conference. You look at a Wilkinson quarter-cracks duo in the Buckeyes, and then how about Kylie Sand with Rutgers? She has just been a complete table setter for them at the top of the lineup. I'm interested to see how this Rutgers team shows out in their first Big Ten tournament since 2019. They only have a single player on today's current team that was in that postseason in Katie Wingert. So can the senior really rally this team? We've seen them have a tremendous run so far, but again, for me, it's going to be the pitchers in the circle in that high-powered offense matchup.
Yeah, always interesting when you're one of those teams that heads into this tournament knowing you have to win the whole thing to be able to get into the NCAA tournament. Maybe you play like you have nothing to lose because you truly have nothing to lose. You already mentioned that you liked Michigan as a sleeper. This despite the fact that the Wolverines come into this tournament as the 10 seed. Now, obviously, we knew there would be transition. Bonnie Thole, the longtime assistant to Carol Hutchins, taking over. They also lost a bunch of players over the last couple of years, had some injuries to deal with this year, and yet you still like Michigan, not just in this matchup, but maybe to make a run.
I do, because I think Durkowski is that good. She has that much potential in her arsenal. Her changeup is just, when it's on, it is lethal, just like a Williams or a Pease. But this is a pitcher's duel as well. I mean, Bailey Partial for Penn State, 5th-year ace, has been there forever, returning All-American for them in the circle. She's just been incredible, again, in her final campaign. So you look at a Wolverines team that, again, is struggling to get their offense going a little bit. They've switched up the lineup in the past couple of games. We did not see Lexi Blair in Saturday or Sunday's matchup. That's going to be a key for me. If she's healthy this week, if she and Thole in the middle of that lineup can really start to produce some runs, I do think they're a dangerous team.
Yeah, Lexi Blair, it's really been disappointing to watch. No fault of her own, just hasn't been that Big Ten Player of the Year that she was over the last couple of years, mainly because she's been dealing with those nagging injuries that just won't seem to go away. The 8-9 matchup is always fun in any tournament because you have 2 teams who are obviously evenly matched. They finished the regular season with similar records. In this scenario at the softball tournament, it's the Iowa Hawkeyes and the Maryland Terrapins.
Maryland is another team for me that could really potentially go on a run. They have all of the tools. We look at the way that they came into conference play. They were at the top of the conference standings in their non-conference showing. They've got 2 stellar arms in the circle in Weish and Schlotterbeck, and this is a very versatile offense. They have been streaky at times. They haven't played their best ball in conference, but they have Indiana Hoosier type of potential in terms of the way they manufacture runs. They're really tough. McFarland, Greco, Makami, Leck, so much speed, so much power. But then you have an Iowa team like Rutgers in the tournament again for the first time since 2019. And we've just seen stellar performances for them in the circle. Jalen Adams, a first year coming in and has just been incredible in her first Big Ten season. And Brianna Vasquez, the 5th year, has just really held it down for the Hawkeyes.
4th and final first round matchup. The home team, the Illini, they're the number 12 seed, so certainly not expected to do much in this tournament, but you never know when you get into this scenario, and you do have that home crowd behind you. The Illini take on the 5 seed Wisconsin.
Yeah, Illinois, I think you look at the players that they have in their lineup, and they have the potential to really go on a streak if they have the confidence. I think that's been the area that they've struggled with the most this year. They opened up Big Ten, got swept by Rutgers, and we really just haven't seen them recover. And yet you're going up against a Wisconsin team that is really starting to peak and play well. I think the Badgers have one of the deepest bullpens in the entire Big Ten Conference. Matty Schwartz continues to be, I think, the most underrated arm in the entire conference, and they have a stellar duo. Keller and Conway in their lineup are so tough. So again, home field advantage is huge. You know the Illini are going to pack that stadium, but definitely a tough matchup with the Badgers in round one.
I find it fascinating because as we get into these postseason scenarios and experience, right, Sammy, is so important. You mentioned some names like Conwent and Parshall, who seemingly have been around this conference for about a dozen years. Obviously, with the COVID year, everybody getting a little bit of an extra run. They will try to showcase their skills this week in Champaign. Big Ten Softball Tournament starts on Wednesday. We'll bring you every game right here on the Big Ten Network. And that'll do it for this edition of Big Ten Today. For softball analyst Sammy Nettling and today's guests, Northwestern head football coach Pat Fitzgerald, Wisconsin women's rowing coach Bebe Bryans, and of course Willie Burton, I'm Rick Pizzo. Thanks for hanging with us, and we will see you again on Wednesday.